Chapter 1: The Chaos Before Dawn. Camile Jones woke to the sound of her alarm and the faint thud of something hitting the floor in the hallway. She didn't even flinch. In this house, thuds were as common as breathing. She stretched, feeling the pull in her shoulders, and stared at the ceiling for a moment, wondering if today would be the day she finally drank her coffee while it was still hot. Probably not. The thud was followed by Parker's voice, loud and triumphant. "Cassy, you dropped your phone." "Oh wait. Never mind. I'm keeping it." Camile sighed, swung her legs out of bed, and padded toward the door. She didn't need to see the scene to know what was happening. Parker, 13 and fueled by mischief, had found yet another way to torment his sister. Cassy, 15 and perpetually balancing between sarcasm and existential dread, would retaliate in 3-2. "Parker, give it back." Cassie's voice cracked like a whip. Camile opened the door just in time to see Parker sprinting down the hall, Cassy in pursuit, her hair a wild halo around her flushed face. "Morning," Camile said, her tone calm, almost bored, because if she reacted, they'd feed off it like wolves. "Mom, Cassy started, but Parker cut her off with a gleeful shout. "Borrowing? I'm borrowing it." Camile raised an eyebrow. "Borrowing usually involves permission." Parker grinned, all teeth and zero remorse. "Details, Mom, details." Before Camile could respond, Cassy lunged, and Parker bolted down the stairs like a gazelle on a sugar rush. Cassy followed, muttering threats that would make a sailor blush. Camile shook her head and headed for the kitchen. The coffee maker was already humming, thank God for programmable timers. She poured herself a mug, inhaling the rich aroma like it was oxygen. First sip, bliss. Second sip, "Mom!" Cassy's voice again, sharp and urgent. Camile closed her eyes. "What now?" "He's hiding in the laundry room. Tell him to start a load while he's in there," Camile muttered, taking another sip before walking toward the chaos. By the time she reached the laundry room, Parker was crouched behind a basket of towels, clutching Cassy's phone like it was the last slice of pizza on earth. Cassy stood over him, arms crossed, eyes blazing. "Parker," Camile said, her voice calm but firm. "Hand it over." "But Mom, now." He groaned like she'd asked him to donate a kidney, then shoved the phone toward Cassy. She snatched it back, glaring at him. "You're the worst," she hissed. "And you're dramatic?" Parker shot back, already plotting his next prank. Camile held up a hand. "Enough. Breakfast. Both of you." They shuffled toward the kitchen, still muttering under their breath. Camile followed, sipping her coffee like it was armor. Breakfast was a blur of cereal boxes, toast crumbs, and Parker trying to convince Cassy that her favorite band had broken up. Cassy rolled her eyes so hard Camile worried they might get stuck. "Mom," Cassy said suddenly, her tone shifting from annoyed to anxious. "There's this thing at school Friday. Party. Everyone's going." Camile set down her mug. "Okay. I want to go," Cassy continued. "But, I don't know. It's at Jenna's house, and her parents are cool, but there'll be older kids there." Camile nodded slowly. "Thanks for telling me. I mean, I'm not asking for permission yet," Cassy rushed on. "I just wanted to talk about it." Camile smiled. "That's fair. We'll talk tonight. Okay?" Cassy relaxed a fraction, then shot Parker a look as he mimed gagging. "Party," he said dramatically. "Sounds lame." "Sounds like you're jealous," Cassy snapped. "Sounds like you're both eating cold toast if you don't move," Camile said, glancing at the clock. They scrambled, grabbing backpacks and jackets. Camile kissed the tops of their heads as they headed out the door, ignoring Parker's exaggerated groan. When the house finally fell silent, Camile stood in the kitchen, coffee in hand, and exhaled. She loved her kids fiercely, but mornings like this reminded her why she hadn't even thought about dating in years. Who had the energy? Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen and froze. Subject: contract renewal, Brinks Consulting. Her stomach tightened. The name was a ghost she thought she'd buried. Jeff Brinks, her ex-husband, the man who traded family dinners for boardrooms in Europe and a secretary named Elise. Camile opened the email, scanning the words. The contract was up for renewal and they needed her signature, under her married name. She stared at the screen, her reflection faint in the glass. Camile Jones Brinks, a name that felt like a costume she'd outgrown. She took another sip of coffee, letting the bitterness settle on her tongue. Life had a way of reminding you that the past wasn't as far behind as you thought. Camile grabbed her laptop and sat at the kitchen table, the hum of the dishwasher filling the quiet. She typed a quick reply, professional and detached, because that was the only way to deal with Jeff now. When she hit send, she leaned back and rubbed her temples. Outside, the January sky was pale and cold, but sunlight spilled across the floor like a promise. She wasn't angry, not anymore, just tired. Tired of contracts and chaos and mornings that started with thuds. But as she stared out the window, a thought flickered. Small, fragile, but insistent. Maybe tired didn't have to mean stuck. Chapter 2: The Invitation. Camile was halfway through folding laundry when her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen, expecting another email about contracts or a reminder from Cassy about the party. Instead, it was a text from her best friend. Lena. Lena, me, gala, Saturday night. No excuses. Camille frowned, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Gala? Lena had a way of dropping social grenades without warning. Camille. Define gala. The reply came fast. Lena. Charity event at the community center. Dress up, drink wine, pretend we're fancy. You need this. Camille snorted. You need this was Lena's battle cry whenever Camille tried to dodge anything remotely fun. She typed back, Camille. I have 2 kids. Lena. Remember them? The ones who think I'm their personal Uber? Lena. They'll survive. Cassy's old enough to babysit. Parker's old enough to behave. Sort of. Camille hesitated. The idea of dressing up and sipping wine sounded nice. Foreign but nice. Still, the thought of leaving Cassy and Parker alone for an evening made her stomach tighten. Before she could respond, Lena sent another text. Lena. Don't make me come over there and pick out your outfit. I will. Camille laughed under her breath. Lena wasn't bluffing. She typed, Camille, fine. But if Parker sets the house on fire, you're paying for the repairs. Lena, deal. See you Saturday. Wear something that says, I'm fabulous and available. Camille rolled her eyes. Fabulous and available? She felt more like frazzled and exhausted. Still, she couldn't deny the flicker of excitement curling in her chest. It had been years since she'd gone anywhere that didn't involve grocery carts or school fundraisers. That evening, after dinner and homework battles, Camille sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, scrolling through her closet in her mind. She was so deep in thought she didn't notice Cassy hovering until her daughter cleared her throat. Mom, Cassy said, arms crossed. Why are you smiling at your computer like it's Ryan Gosling? Camille blinked. I'm not. She stopped, realizing she probably was. Lena invited me to a gala. Cassy's eyebrows shot up. Like, a fancy party? Sort of, Camille said. It's for charity. Cassy grinned. Are you gonna wear a dress? Camille smirked. That's usually how these things work. Cassy leaned against the counter, eyes sparkling with mischief. Are you gonna meet someone? Camille laughed. It's not that kind of party. Every party is that kind of party, Cassy said, dead serious. You've been single forever. Camille raised an eyebrow. Forever? It's been 3 years. Exactly, Cassy said. That's like, forever times 3. Camille shook her head, amused and slightly horrified. You're 15. You shouldn't be worrying about my love life. I'm not worried, Cassy said. I'm invested. Before Camille could respond, Parker burst into the kitchen like a tornado. What's invested? Are we talking stocks? Because I saw this video about crypto? No, Cassy said, glaring at him. We're talking about Mom meeting someone. Parker's eyes widened. Then he grinned like a cat who'd found the cream. Wait, Mom's going on a date. It's not a date, Camille said quickly. It's a gala. Gala sounds like date with extra steps, Parker said, grabbing a cookie from the jar. Camille groaned. It's a charity event. Lena invited me. Parker shrugged. Cool. Don't embarrass us. Cassy smacked his arm. She's not embarrassing. She's awesome. Camille smiled at that, warmth blooming in her chest. Thanks, Cass. Parker grinned. Just don't dance, or laugh too loud, or talk about us. Camille pointed at him. Go finish your homework before I embarrass you by emailing your teacher. He bolted, laughing all the way down the hall. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, Camille stood in front of her closet, staring at rows of clothes that screamed school pickup and business casual. Nothing screamed gala. She sighed, pulling out a simple black dress she hadn't worn in years. It was elegant enough if a little snug. She held it up, imagining herself in it. For a moment, she saw a version of herself she hadn't met in a long time, the woman who laughed easily, who didn't measure her days in carpools and deadlines. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Camille draped the dress over the chair and turned off the light. Saturday was coming whether she was ready or not. And maybe, just maybe, she was. Chapter 3, The Unexpected Encounter. Saturday arrived like a whisper Camille couldn't ignore. The day was a blur of errands, laundry, and refereeing yet another Cassy versus Parker showdown over the TV remote. By the time evening rolled around, Camille stood in front of the mirror, smoothing the black dress over her hips and wondering if it was too much, or not enough. The dress fit better than she expected, hugging her curves without screaming for attention. She added a silver necklace, simple earrings, and a swipe of lipstick that felt almost rebellious. When she stepped into the living room, Cassy's jaw dropped. Mom, Cassy breathed, eyes wide. You look wow. Camille laughed softly. Wow good or wow scary? Wow like, you could be in a movie, Cassy said, grinning. Seriously. Parker popped his head around the corner, holding a bag of chips. Oh, Mom's fancy. Camille raised an eyebrow. Thanks, Parker. Try not to burn the house down while I'm gone. He saluted with mock solemnity. No promises. Cassy rolled her eyes. We'll be fine. Go have fun. Camille smiled, kissed their heads, and grabbed her clutch. As she stepped out into the cool evening air, a flutter of nerves danced in her stomach. Fun. She wasn't sure she remembered how. The community center was glowing when she arrived, strings of lights draped across the entrance like a promise. Inside, the room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. Camille scanned the crowd, spotting Lena near the bar in a red dress that could stop traffic. Finally, Lena exclaimed, pulling Camille into a hug. "You look amazing." Camille smiled. "You didn't tell me this was that kind of gala." Lena grinned. "Would you have come if I did?" Camille opened her mouth, then closed it. Fair point. They grabbed drinks, white wine for Camille, something neon for Lena, and drifted toward a cluster of tables. Camille was mid-sip when a voice behind her said, warm and amused, "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" She turned and nearly forgot how to breathe. The man standing there was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at the edges and eyes the color of strong coffee. He wore a navy suit, crisp but not stiff, and his smile was easy, like he'd practiced it on sunsets. Camille blinked. "No, go ahead." He slid into the chair, offering his hand. "Ethan." "Camille," she said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, his palm warm. "Nice to meet you, Camille," Ethan said. "I was starting to think I'd be stuck talking to the silent auction table all night." Camille laughed, surprised at how natural it sounded. "That bad?" "Worse," he said, mock serious. "I almost bid on a ceramic rooster just to have something to do." She grinned. "Bold choice. Desperate times," he said, eyes twinkling. They fell into conversation easily, trading jokes about the gala's over-the-top decorations and the mystery meat on the appetizer tray. Camille found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. Ethan was charming, but not in a slick, rehearsed way. He listened. He asked questions. And when he talked about his kids, a daughter in college, a son in high school, his voice softened in a way that tugged at something deep inside her. "So," Ethan said, swirling his drink. "What about you?" "Kids. 2, Camille said. "Cassie's 15, Parker's 13. "Ah," Ethan said, nodding. "The golden years." Camille snorted. "Golden? More like chaotic." "Chaos keeps life interesting," he said, smiling. "At least that's what I tell myself when my son forgets his homework for the 3rd time in a week." Camille laughed, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease. For a moment, she wasn't the tired single mom juggling contracts and carpools. She was just Camille, a woman in a black dress, sipping wine, talking to a man who made her smile. Her phone buzzed on the table, breaking the spell. She glanced at the screen. "Cassy." "Cassy. Mom. Parker put my hairbrush in the freezer." Camille stifled a laugh. "Sorry," she said, typing back quickly. "Camille, tell him I said to put it back. And maybe chill out." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay?" "Just normal life," Camille said, smiling ruefully. "My son thinks pranks are a personality trait." Ethan chuckled. "Sounds familiar." Camille slipped her phone back into her clutch, but the moment had shifted. She felt the pull of responsibility, the invisible tether that always yanked her back. Still, as she stood to leave, Ethan rose too. "Heading out?" he asked. "Yeah," Camille said. "Kids?" He nodded, then hesitated. "Would it be crazy if I asked for your number?" Camille blinked. Her heart did a strange, hopeful flip. "Not crazy," she said softly. They exchanged numbers, and as Camille walked out into the cool night, her pulse thrummed with something she hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Chapter 4, Teenage Drama and Mom Guilt. Sunday morning started with the smell of pancakes and the sound of Cassie's sighs, long, theatrical sighs that could win awards. Camille flipped a pancake and glanced over her shoulder. "Okay," Camille said. "What's with the sighing? Did someone die? Or did Parker steal your charger again?" Cassy sat at the table, chin in her hands, eyes heavy with teenage despair. "Neither. It's worse." Camille raised an eyebrow. "Worse than death and missing chargers? That's a high bar." Cassy groaned. "Jenna's party. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's going. And I don't know if I should." Camille slid a pancake onto a plate and set it in front of her daughter. "What's making you hesitate?" Cassy poked at the pancake like it had personally offended her. "There's gonna be older kids. Juniors. Maybe seniors. And I don't know. It feels intense." Camille sat across from her, folding her hands. "I appreciate you telling me. That's brave." Cassy shrugged, eyes flicking up. "I just don't want to be the weird kid who doesn't go. But I also don't want to be the kid who ends up in some TikTok disaster video." Camille smiled gently. "That's a valid concern. Here's the thing, you don't have to go just because everyone else is. But if you do, we'll make a plan." "A plan?" Cassy frowned. "Situational awareness," Camille said. "Know where you are, who you're with, and how to leave if you need to. No blaming boys or girls, just being smart." Cassy chewed her lip. "So, you'd let me go?" Camille nodded slowly. "If we talk through it and you feel ready, yes." Cassy's shoulders relaxed a little, but her eyes still held uncertainty. Okay. Before Camille could say more, Parker barreled into the kitchen like a storm cloud with legs. Mom! Cassie's being dramatic again. Isn't she? Cassy shot him a glare that could melt steel. Go away. Parker grinned. What's the crisis? Bad hair day? Oh wait, you always have those. Camille held up a spatula like a sword. Parker. Quietly. He plopped into a chair, still smirking. Fine. But if she cries, I'm filming it. Cassy groaned, burying her face in her hands. Camille sighed, guilt tugging at her chest. She wanted to be everything. Mom, mentor, protector. But sometimes it felt like she was barely holding the seams together. Later that afternoon, Camille sat on the couch with her laptop, trying to focus on work while Cassy hovered nearby, scrolling her phone with the intensity of someone decoding ancient texts. Mom, Cassy said suddenly, do you think people change? Camille looked up, startled by the question. Sometimes, she said carefully. Why? Cassy shrugged. Just wondering. Like, that. Did you think he'd change? Camille's breath caught. She closed the laptop slowly. I hoped he would, she admitted. But hoping doesn't make it happen. Cassy nodded, her face unreadable. I don't want to be like that. Camille reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. You won't. You're asking the right questions. Cassy gave a small smile, then retreated to her room. Camille watched her go, heart aching with love and worry. Parenting wasn't about having all the answers, it was about showing up, even when the questions hurt. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text from Ethan. Ethan. Survived the Gala Rooster auction. Barely. Coffee this week? Camille stared at the screen, torn between a laugh and a pang of guilt. Coffee sounded wonderful, but could she carve out time without shortchanging her kids? Without feeling like she was stealing from them? She typed back before she could overthink it. Camille, coffee sounds good. Thursday. As she hit send, Parker's voice rang out from upstairs. Cassy locked me out of the bathroom. Camille closed her eyes and smiled wryly. Chaos never waited. But maybe, just maybe, she could make room for something else too. Chapter 5, Coffee and Complications. Thursday arrived with the kind of gray sky that made everything feel slower, heavier. Camille dropped Parker at school, reminded Cassy about her math quiz, and spent the morning juggling emails and a contract revision that refused to behave. By noon, her brain felt like overcooked pasta. She almost canceled. Almost. But when she glanced at her phone and saw Ethan's text, still good for coffee? Something inside her said yes. Not the practical voice that usually ran her life, but the quiet one that whispered about wanting more than survival. She typed back, on my way. The cafe was warm and humming with soft chatter, the scent of roasted beans wrapping around her like a hug. Camille spotted Ethan at a corner table, his jacket draped over the chair, a book open in front of him. He looked up as she approached, and his smile, easy, genuine, made her pulse skip. Camille, he said, standing to pull out her chair. Glad you made it. Me too, she said, settling in. I almost didn't. Busy day? He asked. Busy life, she said with a wry smile. But you know how that goes. Ethan chuckled. I do. My son had a science project due today. We were up until midnight building a volcano that looked more like a sad cupcake. Camille laughed, the sound bubbling out before she could stop it. That sounds familiar. They ordered latte for her, black coffee for him, and fell into conversation that felt surprisingly easy. They talked about kids, about the strange math of parenting where exhaustion and joy coexist. They traded stories about forgotten lunches, school drama, and the universal truth that teenagers speak in sighs and eye rolls. So, Ethan said after a pause, leaning back, what about you? Outside of work and parenting. What's your thing? Camille blinked. My thing? Yeah, he said, smiling. Hobby, passion, something that's just yours. Camille hesitated, realizing how long it had been since anyone asked her that. I used to paint, she said slowly. Before everything. Paint. His eyes lit up. That's amazing. Do you still? She shook her head. Not really. Life got loud. Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. Maybe it's time to make it quiet again. The words landed like a pebble in a still pond, rippling through her. She wanted to say something. Something clever. Something brave. But her phone buzzed on the table, slicing through the moment. Cassy. Cassy. Mom. Can we talk later? About the party? Camille's chest tightened. She typed back quickly. Of course. I'll be home soon. When she looked up, Ethan was watching her. Not with annoyance, but with understanding. Kids, he said softly. They have perfect timing. Camille smiled, grateful for his grace. Always. They lingered a little longer, sipping coffee and weaving through conversation that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. When they finally stood to leave, Ethan hesitated. Can I call you? He asked. Camille nodded, her heart doing that hopeful flip again. I'd like that. As she walked out into the cool afternoon, her phone buzzed again. Cassy, Parker, life pulling her back. But for the first time in years, Camile felt something else tugging too. Possibility. And maybe hope. Chapter 6, X Factor. Friday morning started with a ping that made Camile's stomach knot. She was halfway through packing Parker's lunch when her phone lit up with an email notification. Subject: contract renewal, urgent follow-up, from Jeff Brinks. Camile froze, the knife hovering over a slice of bread. Jeff. She hadn't seen his name in her inbox for months, and yet here it was, bold and smug like it owned the screen. She wiped her hands and opened the email. Camile, we need your signature on the renewal by Monday. The client insists on continuity under the Brinks name. Call me if you have questions. Jeff. No greeting beyond her name. No pleasantries. Just business like the last 15 years of marriage had been a typo he'd corrected. Camile stared at the words, anger simmering low and steady. Not the volcanic rage she'd felt when he left, but something quieter, sharper. She'd restored her maiden name for a reason. She wasn't his anymore. Not in any way that mattered. Mom! Cassie's voice pulled her back. She stood in the doorway, hair in a messy bun, eyes curious. You okay? Camile forced a smile. Fine. Just work stuff. Cassy tilted her head. Dad. Camile hesitated, then nodded. He emailed about a contract. Cassie's expression shifted, part curiosity, part something heavier. Do you hate him? The question landed like a stone in Camile's chest. She set down the knife and turned to face her daughter. No, she said softly. I don't hate him. I just don't trust him. Cassy chewed her lip. Do you think people like him ever change? Camile sighed, brushing a strand of hair from Cassy's face. Sometimes people change, but not always in the ways we hope. Cassy nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful. I don't want to end up with someone like that. Camile smiled gently. You won't. You're asking the right questions. Before Cassy could respond, Parker burst into the kitchen like a human alarm clock. Mom, where's my hoodie? The blue one. Camile pointed toward the laundry basket. Check there. He bolted, leaving a trail of chaos in his wake. Cassy rolled her eyes, but her smile lingered as she grabbed her backpack. Thanks for talking, she said quietly. Always, Camile replied, watching her go. Later, after the kids were at school, Camile sat at her desk, staring at Jeff's email. She typed a response, short, professional, detached. Jeff, I'll review the contract and send the signature by Monday. Please direct all future correspondence to my business email. Camile Jones. She hit send and exhaled, the tension in her shoulders easing just a fraction. She wasn't angry. Not anymore. Just done. Her phone buzzed again, this time a text from Ethan. Ethan, hope your day's going better than mine. My son just tried to microwave a metal spoon. Camile laughed out loud, the sound startling in the quiet room. She typed back, Camile, that's impressive. Mine hid his sister's hairbrush in the freezer yesterday. Ethan, parenting, the ultimate survival sport. Coffee again soon? Camile stared at the screen, a smile tugging at her lips. Coffee sounded good. Coffee sounded like breathing. She typed, yes, soon. As she set the phone down, sunlight spilled across her desk, warm and bright. For the first time in a long time, the past felt like a shadow she could step out of. Chapter 7, Parker's Pranks and Parental Panic. By Tuesday, Camile was starting to believe the week might glide by without incident. That illusion shattered at 11:17 a.m. when her phone buzzed with a call from the school. She answered, heart already racing. Hello, Mrs. Jones. The voice was calm but edged with the kind of patience reserved for hostage negotiators. This is Principal Harris. We need to discuss Parker. Camile closed her eyes. What did he do? A pause. He initiated what he called a social experiment during lunch. Camile's stomach sank. Define social experiment. He convinced half the cafeteria that the milk cartons were expired and started a protest. Camile pinched the bridge of her nose. A protest? Yes, signs were involved. Camile pictured Parker, grinning like a revolutionary, leading a brigade of 7th graders chanting about dairy injustice. I'll be right there. The school office smelled faintly of disinfectant and despair. Parker sat in a chair, legs swinging, looking like he'd just won an award. When he saw Camile, his grin widened. Mom, did you know milk expires faster if you don't? Camile said, holding up a hand. Just don't. Principal Harris cleared his throat. We appreciate Parker's enthusiasm for critical thinking, but disrupting lunch service isn't acceptable. Camile nodded, mortified. I understand. It won't happen again. Parker opened his mouth, probably to argue the ethics of dairy distribution, but Camile shot him a look that could melt steel. He slumped back, muttering under his breath. After a lecture and a promise to keep Parker's experiments strictly theoretical, Camile escorted her son to the car. He climbed in, still buzzing with pride. Mom, he said. It was genius. People were questioning authority. That's how revolutions start. Camile gripped the steering wheel. You're 13. The only revolution you need to start is cleaning your room. Parker grinned. You're welcome for making lunch exciting. Camile groaned, wondering if parenting came with hazard pay. That evening, as Camille recounted the saga to Lena over text, her phone buzzed again. Ethan. Ethan. Heard about Parker's milk protest. Legendary. Need backup? Camille blinked, then laughed. Of course Lena had told him. She typed back, Camille, backup sounds great. Got any tips for raising a future activist? Ethan, bribery. And coffee. Want to meet tomorrow? Camille hesitated, guilt tugging at her like a stubborn thread. Parker's stunt had eaten half her day. Cassy still needed to talk about Jenna's party. And yet, the thought of sitting across from Ethan, laughing over lattes, felt like oxygen. She typed, yes, tomorrow works. Later, as she tucked Parker into bed, still lecturing him about consequences, Camille caught herself smiling. Not because of the chaos, but because amid the mess, something new was blooming. Something that felt like hope. Chapter 8. The first real date. Saturday night crept in like a secret Camille wasn't sure she was ready to share. She stood in front of her mirror, smoothing the soft navy dress Lena had bullied her into buying. It wasn't flashy. Camille didn't do flashy, but it skimmed her curves in a way that whispered confidence instead of screaming for attention. She added a delicate silver bracelet, a touch of mascara, and lipstick that felt like a dare. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Ethan, outside when you're ready. No rush. Camille's pulse fluttered. She grabbed her clutch, took one last look at the woman in the mirror. The one who wasn't just a mom or a business owner, but someone who still deserved laughter and late-night conversations, and headed out. Ethan's car was parked at the curb, sleek but not ostentatious. He stepped out as she approached, his smile warm enough to melt the January chill. Wow, he said, his voice low, almost reverent. You look incredible. Camille laughed softly, nerves unraveling just a little. Thanks. You clean up pretty well yourself. He grinned, offering his arm like they were in some old movie. Ready. Ready, she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. The restaurant was cozy, tucked away on a quiet street, all amber light and soft jazz. Ethan had chosen well, intimate without being intimidating. They settled into a corner booth, menus forgotten as conversation flowed like water. Camille found herself laughing more than she had in years. Ethan was funny, but not in a performative way. His humor was easy, threaded with self-awareness. He told her about his son's obsession with building a drone army, about his daughter's college adventures, and listened, really listened, when Camille talked about Cassy's party dilemma and Parker's milk carton revolution. You've got amazing kids, Ethan said, his tone sincere. Smart. Spirited. Camille smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. Spirited is one word for it. World-changing is another, he said, eyes twinkling. She laughed, shaking her head. You're an optimist. Guilty, he said. But I like to think chaos is just creativity in disguise. Camille tilted her head, studying him. You really believe that? I have to, he said, his voice softening. Otherwise parenting would feel like a war instead of an adventure. The words settled over her like a blanket, comforting, unexpected. For a moment, the noise in her head quieted. No contracts, no guilt, just this. Two people sharing a table, a laugh, a possibility. Dinner stretched into dessert, then coffee, then a walk under streetlights that painted the pavement gold. Camille felt lighter, like someone had loosened the knots inside her. When they reached her house, Ethan turned to her, his expression gentle but steady. I had a great time tonight. Me too, Camille said, her voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, then smiled. Can I call you tomorrow? Camille nodded, her heart doing that hopeful flip again. I'd like that. As she watched him drive away, the night air cool against her skin, Camille realized something she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. Chapter 9, Cassy's confession. Sunday evening was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt borrowed, fragile, temporary. Camille was in the kitchen rinsing dishes when Cassy appeared in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself like she was holding something in. Mom, Cassy said softly, can we talk? Camille dried her hands and turned, her heart tightening at the look on her daughter's face. Of course. What's going on? Cassy hesitated, then crossed the room and sat at the table, her phone clutched like a lifeline. It's about the party. Camille pulled out a chair and sat across from her. Okay. Cassy stared at the phone screen, then set it down like it was too heavy. I want to go. I really do. But I'm scared. Camille's chest ached. Scared of what? Cassy's voice cracked, small and raw. Of messing up. Of doing something stupid. Of not fitting in. Everyone acts like it's no big deal, but it feels like this huge test, and if I fail, I'll be, I don't know, invisible. Camille reached across the table, covering Cassy's hand with her own. Sweetheart, you're not invisible. You're amazing. And parties? They're just noise. They don't decide who you are. Cassy blinked hard, tears threatening. But what if something happens? Like, what if someone tries something? Or I freeze? Camille swallowed, choosing her words carefully. Then you call me, or Lena, or anyone you trust. You don't have to handle everything alone. Cassy nodded, but her lip trembled. I don't want to be stupid. Camile squeezed her hand. Wanting to be safe isn't stupid. It's smart. And if you decide not to go, that's okay too. Cassy stared at her, searching for something. Permission, reassurance, maybe both. You really think it's okay? I do, Camile said softly. You don't owe anyone your comfort. Ever. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy but tender. Then Cassy exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping. You always make it sound so simple. Camile smiled. It's not simple, but it's worth saying. Before the moment could settle, Parker burst into the kitchen like a human firecracker. Mom! Cassy! Guess what? Cassy groaned. What now? I beat level 27, Parker announced, arms raised like a champion. Also, I may have accidentally unplugged the Wi-Fi. Camile closed her eyes. Parker. He grinned, oblivious to the emotional gravity he'd just bulldozed. You're welcome. Cassy threw a napkin at him. You're the worst. Camile laughed, the sound breaking through the tension like sunlight. Chaos, she thought. Always chaos. But maybe that was the beauty of it, the way laughter and tears could share the same table. Later, after Parker retreated to his game and Cassy curled up on the couch with her phone, Camile checked her own messages. A text from Ethan waited like a quiet promise. Ethan, thinking of you. Hope today was good. Camile typed back. It was, thanks for asking. She stared at the screen for a moment, then set the phone down, her heart warm and restless all at once. Life wasn't simple, but maybe, just maybe, it was starting to feel possible. Chapter 10, Storms and Surprises. The storm rolled in without warning, thick clouds swallowing the late afternoon sun, rain hammering against the windows like an urgent knock. Camile was in the kitchen, prepping dinner, when her phone rang. The caller ID made her heart lurch. Cassy. She answered immediately. Sweetheart? What's wrong? Cassy's voice was tight, trembling. Mom, I'm at Jenna's. The power went out. It's dark and people are freaking out. Camile gripped the counter, pulse spiking. Are you safe? I'm in the living room with Jenna and a few others, Cassy said quickly. But some kids went outside, and it's pouring. I don't know what to do. Camile's mind raced. The party. The storm. Her daughter scared and stranded. Stay inside. Stay with Jenna. I'm coming. She hung up, grabbed her keys and bolted for the door, only to find the rain coming down in sheets, the wind howling like a warning. She hesitated, then dialed Lena. No answer. Her stomach twisted. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan. Ethan. Everything okay? Camile stared at the screen, then typed with shaking fingers. Cassy's stuck at a party. Power's out. Storm's bad. I'm heading there now. The reply came fast. Text me the address. I'll meet you there. Camile didn't think. She just sent it. The drive was a blur of wipers and white-knuckled steering. Streets shimmered under the downpour, headlights slicing through the dark. Camile's heart thudded with every mile, every flash of lightning. She hated storms. Always had. But tonight, fear wasn't for herself. It was for Cassy. When she pulled up to Jenna's house, Ethan's car was already there, parked at an angle like he'd flown in. He was out in the rain before she could open her door, his jacket soaked, his expression steady. Inside, he said, voice firm but calm. Let's get her. The house was chaos. Kids huddled in clusters, phones glowing like fireflies, voices pitched high with panic. Camile scanned the room, her breath catching when she spotted Cassy curled on the couch, pale but unharmed. Mom! Cassy bolted into her arms, clinging like she was 5 again. Camile held her tight, whispering, You're okay. I've got you. Ethan hovered nearby, his presence solid, grounding. Everyone else good? He asked Jenna, who nodded shakily. Camile turned to Cassy. We're leaving. Grab your stuff. As they stepped back into the storm, Ethan shielded them with his jacket, his hand steady on Camile's elbow. The rain was relentless, but somehow, with him there, it felt less like a threat and more like a challenge they could face together. Back at Camile's house, after towels and Coco and Parker's wide-eyed questions, Did you fight a tornado? Cassy curled up on the couch, exhaustion softening her edges. Thanks, she murmured, eyes flicking to Ethan. For helping. Ethan smiled. Anytime. Camile walked him to the door, gratitude swelling in her chest. You didn't have to come. I wanted to, he said simply. You don't have to do everything alone, Camile. The words hit deep, warm and terrifying all at once. She nodded, unable to speak, and watched him disappear into the rain. Later, when the house was quiet and Cassy was asleep, Camile stood by the window, storm still raging outside. Her life had always felt like weather, unpredictable, demanding. But tonight, for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was bracing against it alone. She felt safe, and maybe, just maybe, ready for something more. Chapter 11, The Big Choice. Monday morning dawned crisp and bright, but Camile's mood was anything but. She sat at her desk, staring at the contract on her screen like it was a riddle she didn't want to solve. The renewal was straightforward, except for one detail, her name. Camile Jones Brinks. The letters glared back at her, old and unyielding. The name she'd shed like old skin, now clawing its way back because of business continuity and client comfort. She could sign it. She could pretend it didn't matter. But it did. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Ethan, good luck today. You've got this. Camille stared at the words, warmth blooming in her chest even as doubt gnawed at her edges. Did she have this? Or was she still tethered to a past she swore she'd left behind? By noon, she drafted 3 emails and deleted them all. The first was polite compliance. The second was fiery defiance. The third was something in between, but none felt right. She pushed back from the desk, frustration simmering, and grabbed her coat. Coffee. She needed coffee and maybe clarity. The cafe was quiet, sunlight spilling across worn wooden tables. Ethan was already there, his smile steady, grounding. When she slid into the chair across from him, he studied her face. Rough morning? He asked. Camille laughed softly, the sound brittle. You could say that. Talk to me, he said, leaning in. She hesitated, then exhaled. It's the contract. They want me to sign under my married name. Legally, it's fine. But it feels wrong. Ethan nodded slowly. Because it's not who you are anymore. Exactly, Camille said, her voice tight. I fought to reclaim my name, my identity. And now I'm supposed to pretend like none of that mattered because it's convenient. Ethan's gaze was steady, his tone gentle but firm. Then don't. Camille blinked. It's not that simple. Maybe it is, he said. You're the business. You're the brand. If they value you, they'll adapt. And if they don't, that says more about them than you. Camille stared at him, the words sinking deep. She'd spent years bending. Around Jeff, around expectations, around the chaos of life. Maybe it was time to stand straight. You make it sound easy, she murmured. It's not easy, Ethan said. But it's worth it. Camille smiled faintly, a knot loosening inside her. You're good at this. At what? He asked, grinning. Making me believe I can do hard things, she said. His smile softened. That's because you already can. Later, back at her desk, Camille opened a new email. Her fingers hovered over the keys, then began to type. Clear, firm, unapologetic. I will sign under my legal name, Camile Jones. Please update the contract accordingly. She hit send, her pulse steady, her breath even. It wasn't just a business decision. It was a declaration. She wasn't Jeff's anymore. She wasn't anyone's shadow. She was Camile Jones, and that was enough. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan. Ethan. How'd it go? Camille typed back, a smile tugging at her lips. I chose me. Chapter 12, Love in the Chaos. Thursday evening was a perfect snapshot of Camille's life. Parker was in the living room, shouting at his video game like it owed him money, while Cassy sat at the kitchen table, scrolling her phone with the solemnity of a Supreme Court judge. Camille stirred a pot of pasta, her phone buzzing on the counter. Ethan. Dinner tomorrow? My treat. Unless Parker's planning another revolution. Camille laughed softly, typing back. No revolution scheduled. Dinner sounds great. She set the phone down, a smile tugging at her lips. It wasn't just the idea of dinner, it was the ease of it. The way Ethan fit into her life without demanding space, without trying to rewrite the script. He wasn't swooping in to save her. He was simply there, solid, steady, like a lighthouse in the storm. The next evening, Camille found herself at a small bistro with Ethan, the kind of place where candles flickered and conversations hummed like quiet music. They ordered wine, shared a plate of bruschetta, and laughed about Parker's milk carton protest and Cassy's TikTok obsession. You know, Ethan said, swirling his glass, I think chaos might be your superpower. Camille raised an eyebrow. Chaos, he grinned. You juggle kids, work, life, and you still show up looking like this. Camille laughed, warmth blooming in her chest. Looking like what? Like someone who deserves more than survival, he said softly. The words landed deep, threading through the knots she'd carried for years. She wanted to deflect, to joke, but instead, she let herself breathe them in. Maybe, she said quietly, maybe I'm starting to believe that. When they returned to her house, the porch light glowed like a welcome. Parker was sprawled on the couch, controller in hand, while Cassy peeked from the hallway, her eyes sharp with curiosity. Mom, Parker said without looking up. Did you bring food? Camille laughed. We ate at the restaurant. Rude, Parker muttered, mashing buttons. Cassy smirked. So, was it a date? Camille shot her a look. Go do your homework. Cassy grinned, disappearing down the hall, but not before whispering. You're smiling. Camille touched her cheek, realizing Cassy was right. She was smiling, and not the polite, practice smile she wore for clients or PDA meetings. This was different, real, alive. Later, after Ethan left with a promise to call, Camille stood in the quiet kitchen, the hum of the dishwasher filling the space. Life was still messy. Contracts, carpools, teenage drama. But tonight it felt like a beautiful kind of mess. The kind that didn't need fixing, just living. She poured herself a glass of wine, leaned against the counter, and let the truth settle in. She wasn't waiting for perfect anymore. She was choosing joy in the chaos, in the laughter, in the possibility of love that didn't erase her life but added to it. And for the first time in years, that felt enough. Chapter 13, a new chapter. Saturday morning was loud, messy, and perfect in its own chaotic way. Parker was in the backyard, launching a homemade rocket that looked suspiciously like a soda bottle taped to a broomstick. Cassy sat on the porch steps, scrolling her phone and pretending not to care, though Camile caught her smiling when the rocket sputtered and Parker yelled, "Science rules!" Camile stood in the doorway, coffee in hand, watching her kids with a heart so full it almost hurt. This was her life, imperfect, unpredictable, and hers. For years, she'd carried the weight of making everything right, of filling every gap Jeff left behind. But now, she wasn't patching holes anymore. She was building something new. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Ethan. "Ethan, brunch? I'm bringing the world's best cinnamon rolls. And maybe a surprise." Camile laughed softly, typing back, "You had me at cinnamon rolls." An hour later, Ethan arrived with a box that smelled like heaven and a grin that made Camile's pulse skip. Parker immediately zeroed in on the pastries, while Cassy gave Ethan a look that was equal parts curiosity and approval. "Hi," Ethan said, stepping inside like he belonged. Not as an intruder, not as a savior, but as someone who understood the rhythm of this house. "Hope you're hungry." "Always," Camile said, smiling. They gathered around the kitchen island, laughter spilling like sunlight. Parker launched into a dramatic retelling of his rocket failure, complete with sound effects, while Cassy chimed in with sarcastic commentary that had everyone laughing. Camile watched them, her kids, Ethan, and felt something shift. Not a lightning bolt, not a fairy tale ending. Something quieter, stronger, belonging. Later, when the cinnamon rolls were crumbs and Parker had retreated to plot his next experiment, Cassy lingered in the doorway, her eyes bright. "Mom," she said softly, "I like him." Camile's breath caught. "Yeah," Cassy nodded. "He's real. Not fake nice like some people." Camile smiled, warmth blooming deep. "I think so too." Cassy grinned, then disappeared down the hall, leaving Camile alone with Ethan and a silence that felt anything but empty. "She's tough," Ethan said, his voice gentle. "But she's smart." "She is," Camile said, her throat tight. "They both are." Ethan reached across the counter, his fingers brushing hers. A simple touch, steady and sure. "So are you." Camile met his gaze, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was standing on shaky ground. She felt rooted, ready. That night, after the house settled into its familiar hum, Camile curled up on the couch with a glass of wine, the storm outside reduced to a whisper. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was beautiful, messy, loud, full of laughter and second chances. And as her phone buzzed with a goodnight text from Ethan, Camile smiled, knowing this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. Epilogue. 6 months later. The June sun spilled across Camile's kitchen like liquid gold, warm and easy. The house hummed with its usual rhythm. Parker in the backyard, shouting triumphantly as his latest rocket soared higher than the fence, and Cassy perched at the counter, earbuds in, scrolling through summer playlists. Camile stirred a pitcher of iced tea, her phone buzzing on the counter. A text from Ethan. "Ethan, on my way. Tell Parker I brought reinforcements for his space program." Camile smiled, shaking her head. Reinforcements meant Ethan's son, Jake, a lanky 16-year-old who had become Parker's partner in chaos and Cassy's reluctant big brother figure. The kids had folded Ethan into their world like he'd always been there, and Camile, well, she was learning how to fold herself into something new too. Later, they gathered on the porch. Camile, Ethan, Cassy, Parker, and Jake, laughing as Parker's rocket sputtered and Jake declared, "We need more duct tape." Cassy rolled her eyes but didn't hide her grin, and Camile caught Ethan watching her with that steady warmth that still made her breath hitch. Life wasn't perfect. It was loud and messy and full of unexpected turns. But it was good, better than good. It was hers. Camile leaned against the railing, iced tea in hand, and let the laughter wash over her. 6 months ago, she'd been bracing against storms, patching holes, surviving. Now, she was building something strong, something joyful, something that felt like home. Ethan stepped beside her, his fingers brushing hers in a quiet promise. "You okay?" he asked softly. Camile smiled, her heart steady. "More than okay." And as Parker's rocket finally launched into the blue, trailing a ribbon of smoke like a victory flag, Camile knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was the start of everything she'd almost stopped believing in.